Digital minimalism in the sense of digital intent, meaning you only use digital tools as well as tools. You don't indulge, own, or use digital tools that serve no value to you. For example, not having an Instagram or TikTok simply due to it not having enough value to you. Not necessarily about converting everything into digital. You strike me as someone who might be interested in that from our previous conversation. Awesome to hear that you are also a minimalist. I see. So, that's interesting. My answer to that, I mean, compartmentalizing categorization is very minimalistic in terms of how one rationalize and adapt to modern life. So I would probably say no, not necessarily. I do not prescribe to any form of digital minimalism because digital intent means that you can only find intent where you determine it. So if you're saying you only use digital tools as well tools, and you don't indulge or own or use digital tools that serve no value to you, you're predetermining if there is a value to everything. So like, does Instagram or TikTok have value to you or enough value to you? That's generated in a more like egotistical, selfish way of determining that. Well, anything based on the value system is not necessarily minimalistic, right? Like what is determined. So it doesn't have to be digital. Minimalism is probably a more accurate statement in my opinion. When you think of digital minimalism, it's suggesting a very selective bias towards the idea that digital tools are less valuable or need to focus on reducing. If you leverage specific ways of using TikTok and Instagram to produce value for yourself, that's an alternative. So that's digital maximalism. So in my opinion, I am interested in the concept of digital minimalism. However, for my purpose and my life, I don't necessarily minimalize or like embrace the minimalistic lifestyle because I choose not to maximize anything, or vice versa. The idea is I prescribe to ideas where you are able to problem solve. So if a minimalistic lifestyle or a specific type of minimalism aids in an overall quality of life improvement in my life, then I embrace certain elements of minimalism. Like, for example, coping with materialism, right? Things that I have this urge to collect and be a completionist. That's kind of more of a maximalistic tendency. So if I had to say, and you made another comment about like, it's not necessarily converting everything into digital. It's true. However, converting most things to digital or not digital is a problem-solving technique that you use to either aid in minimalist lifestyle or not. So, these things are interconnected. So I don't necessarily want to compartmentalize whether it's digital or not. In the terms of the comment that you made regarding tools, like, it again not really restricted to digital things. Digital things may not necessarily be just tools. You don't only use digital things for tools, you also use digital things for quality of life. So I don't want to be too reductive in the sense that you only want to see digital tools as tools. Some things digital is almost subjectively essential for someone's lifestyle. For example, career lifestyle, like bioinformaticians, maybe AI aided learning, I mean, there are a lot of ways that the digital thing can be argued as not simply just a tool. So maybe that's a deep cut. I've never heard it like said this way, digital minimalism. I guess I would take a step back and look at minimalism as a whole, where I would say if you can evaluate things that you want to maximize or minimize, that's effectively where I would start, as opposed to specifically focusing on one way of doing things. So digital minimalism would suggest that you are trying to minimize digital footprint of your lifestyle, and that is your focus, rather than considering the possibility that you can take a digital tool and maximize it to become a lifestyle habit. So it's eliminating the possibility of something else, right? And I don't necessarily prescribe to that kind of thing. It's kind of like really extreme. Can I ask you a deeper question regarding this? You mentioned it at the start of your answer regarding assigning value. Yeah. Sure. Water. I need fire. Well, how do you assign value to things? That's a good question. I mean, isn't that like the essential $1 billion question for most people? And since you're asking me how I assign values, right? Things including objects, my value system first predicates on how sustainable it is. My value system is, I guess, one of the first priorities is sustainability, right? If it is impacting an overall quality dip over time, then I would attempt to value it less. Like, I guess this is like one of those like meaning of life things. Net positives. You aim for net positive. So, for example, if I took let's say TikTok, right? What are the outputs and what are the inputs? I don't know what they are, obviously. I actually haven't used TikTok. So what are the outputs or inputs? If I had to list like something, let's say factors that would be in the nice positive category, footprint of influence. So how pragmatic it is to get me closer to a larger audience. So TikTok would be kind of high or high on that. Negative would be sustainability, sustainability things like time spent, right? Time is quite precious. So you would try to find if in your time spent, is that sustainable to still achieve a net positive by associating with someone. So for example, if I said my focus was I need some sort of interactability that allows me to have a nice feeling. It's so arbitrary, but a nice feeling. Is it sustainable to have the time investment? It's very difficult, right? So there's usually though my top priority is if it's a source of empathy and compassion, then I can see a return on investment most of the time. However, my top priority on the negative category, my top priority is usually time management because of my past history with being stretched thin. So if I understand your point, it's all about the input and output of results in an incredibly reductive way, certainly. Yes. Usually that's incredibly hard to measure. So, hello there, official Chapos. Enthusiastic. Did you rename yourself? Is that why? I feel like I know someone who talks in all caps. Oh, TJ. I see. Hello, TJ. So sustainability, not results. Yeah, sustainability. I think in the end, sustainability with a net positive, whatever that means, it's so difficult. Because I usually do process oriented approach to life. So rarely do I think about like when it comes to the whole minimalistic and lifestyle things. It's an ongoing project, so I don't like project how far down it is. So sustainability is kind of difficult to answer looking forward, but it's a little bit more easier to think about in retrospect. So have I sustained something? You start with a plan and you tweak it. And the idea is you're building efficiency. So regardless if it's sustainable now, you're going to improve the sustainability regardless. So every single day, you find more and more sustainability. So that's kind of like efficiency focused, where if you're getting a net positive now, how do you tweak it to get a bigger net positive and then a bigger net positive, all for the anticipation that there may be negatives along the way, right? Like the eventual negatives. So how do you value skill? Well, what type of skills will be more net positive? Now, not necessarily trying to anticipate what will happen, or like there are things that are natural part of life, like death, grief, depression, right? And you can build a lot of skills towards them. The idea is you're constantly building and elevating sustainability for as long as you can live. So regardless of how good you have it now, I'm always aiming for a higher and higher sustainability. And my typical goal for sustainability as like a safety net is to invest in people. So the value system that I have typically is very selectively biased towards what type of skills, what type of tools per se, what type of digital platform, what type of something that will inevitably increase my net of ability to interact with people. And how sustainable that is. So in the future, if it becomes, I haven't gotten to a point where I need to retract. So maybe I've overextended or expanded too much. So in terms of like digital minimalism, like going back to your first question, I haven't gotten to a point where I'm like, I need to contract that. I rarely have played video games for the sake of self-service or self-pleasure, or learn a language for the sake of my own personal pride and whatnot. So really, it's still, if I had to really narrow it down, any potential that I can see to creatively leverage a tool or a skill set or something in order to increase my ability to adapt to human interactions, probably my top priority. I found that sustainability often correlates with the person's ability to interact with other people, in my opinion. Does your view come from deterministic view? Oh, I've been asked this before. And it's kind of tough because I'm not even sure how people define deterministic these days. Someone actually had a deep discussion or challenged me in a way in deterministic, and that person is a determinist. Actually, that person happened to have been a developer as well, and they're probably still working low-key for net ease, probably. Or does it involve any spiritual meaning of a high power? Yes, no. Anything that reached me with empathy for the current situation is probably, if I have someone spiritual in my life, then the answer is probably yes. I don't necessarily have anyone spiritual in my life. I don't necessarily have someone who defines himself as a deterministic perspective. So it's kind of a no for both of them right now. I don't want to ask too personal questions on stream. It's fine. This is an AMA stream for a reason. But I'm not asking if you're religious. It doesn't. I mean, I would say yes or no regardless. I have personal friends who are maybe. I don't even know what you can say, like religious out of convenience. But where your view ultimately comes from? My view is that life, as a like, if I want to give like a very harsh and concise response, is, I think humans are social creatures, right? And to elevate one's life and one's legacy is to embrace the idea that you're human. So anything that furthers my human connection while also not destroying my humanity is probably where I'm going, where it guides my viewpoints. So if I can help 5 people at the expense of myself, maybe I'm more than likely to value that. If I value myself as a human, that's a sustainability part. So I want to find oftentimes as many ways I can balance being able to improve my interpersonal skills while sustaining my necessities as a human being. So, you know, I have to eat, I have to sleep, I need to do maintenance, and in a way, I sacrifice any. You might be saying sacrifice, but I am willing to trade pretty much all of my worldly desires per se in order to reach more people. I think the greatest legacy or the greatest input, in my opinion, are the people that you are. So in a way, that's kind of what I do every day. It is worth mentioning that I'm at a stage in life where I don't necessarily feel that I'm pressured to focus on self, since I have largely the necessary skills and sustainable, like problem solving skills and sustainability that doesn't require too much more maintenance or improvement. Like, how do I eat a healthy diet? How to maintain exercise? How to thwart a bad habit and adjust to a new habit? How to approach death? How to manage grief? Right? Those type of things, I think, because of how my life happened to this day, now I don't have to necessarily concern myself with them in the sense of preparing myself and whatnot. Obviously, the real thing is can't really prepare as much as work towards those things. So now my focus is a support system, reaching people, right? That kind of thing. So it's outwardly. Lots of the times it's outwardly now. The things that I talk about when it comes to like minimalism and stuff, those are a product of the past to create sustainability. I definitely did not have a sustainable lifestyle when it came to material goods, and then not a sustainable lifestyle when it came to self-improvement. So nowadays, we've kind of found some sustainable solutions. Largely, if there's any viewpoint I can say when a value system is, if I can see myself doing it for the rest of my life optionally, then it has a high value. If I can't see it do it for my rest of my life, then it has a lower value score, I suppose. That's probably like the most reductive way of looking at it. But interesting, you sacrifice for the sake of everyone else. Well, yes, to some extent. The idea is that I have something I can turn into. I can turn what I traded for more, at least more value in my opinion. So that's kind of, yeah, that's probably the way I would phrase it. Could you define sustain? Just curious what you put into those words. Sustainability. Sustainability. At the end of the day, if that thing is taking away more than it is giving you, whatever that means, right? Maybe catharsis or happiness or something, then it's negative. It's not sustainable, right? However, if we step back, we have to take all the inputs and all the outputs. So is my life going net positive every day? I'm gonna write that down, whatever that means. The reason why I'm saying that is the act of problem solving and critical thinking, which is involved in creating sustainability in life, is very I obviously this is a subjective topic, right? So for me, if I go to bed and if I get up and I find that I'm negative, as in I feel further away than I do the next day, then I need to create more sustainability. So for example, if I don't look forward to tomorrow, there's a sustainability issue. And that is where all the value goes towards. How can I convince myself to get up and do everything I want to do? As in, even the things I need to do, I will still aim to make it so that I want to do them. That is the inevitable game of sustainability. I don't and also be cautious when I say sustainability. I don't mean sufficiency. Like, it's not sufficient to just get by the day. That's not the same. I guess you could even call it efficiency. Like it's a combination of efficiency and sustainability. You're aiming for more. So tomorrow I aim to be even more excited than yesterday. It may not happen. Like, I'm not saying it always happens. You're not expecting all your choices and all your stuff to increase sustainability. Every day you're working towards creating more and more positive things. The reason why also that I don't want to say efficiency is because efficiency doesn't necessarily lead to sustainability for a person's quality of life. For example, if you're focused on like language learning, right? And you want to get 100 kanji in 1 week, then you want 101, then 102. That doesn't necessarily lead to sustainability. At some point, that's going to hurt sustainability and it's going to have diminished return. So in a way, you are trying to become more efficient, but the idea is you're trying to become more efficient in a sustainable way. As in, if you are waking up with 20 positive stamina points, I'm trying my best every day to get 21 the next day, 22 the next day. It might take years to get 1 extra stamina point. The idea is that the more stamina you have, the more sustainable anything that hits you, your life, let's say one day, oh no, you got to do something. You got to do something with something that happened. You're built for it. Your stamina and your endurance is built for it. So, and it's not necessarily efficiency as well, because I'm not trying to spend all my energy as well. So I stuck with the word sustainability, where I'm constantly farming for more energy or more positivity in my life that I can use at any time and address anything. So at the end of the day, I'm not actually completely exhausted. Maybe slightly near exhaustion, but as I get closer to the end of the day, I'm more liberal with my energy because I know the next day it'll be restored, right? So I'm not driving myself into the ground, but at the same time building myself up for all the opportunities and occasions. That includes tools, right? How if I invest in a tool, how many applications can I imagine temporarily, tentatively, for now, and then how can I be creative to increase its application? If I'm developing a skill, how many ways can I use it? And it's usually directed towards how can I address future interpersonal opportunities or anything like that, or obstacles. Like if someone's depressed, have I been working on a skill set to address a friend who is depressed or someone I'm acquainted? Well, I spent all the time being creative about it. So one day I will be set to at least offer some sort of application of it. So every day I'm quote unquote self-improving in a manner that I hope it will be useful in the future, all while maintaining that I'm not expending my net energy, as in I'm not waking up the next day more tired. I'm not waking up the next day just getting by, or at the end of the day I'm not just getting by with okay, all the way at the end of the day, like if I'm about to sleep, yeah, I would spend all that currency and then wait for the next day. Throughout my day though, I'm always available to address things that come up, right? And that to me is a more sustainable lifestyle, because if something bad comes up, you're ready for it. It doesn't like derail everything because you're so stretched thin. I think when it comes to minimalism and maximalism, just to go back to the first two, minimalism and maximalism, it's kind of like a video game. If you're minimalizing, then anything that hinders that perspective can be off-putting. So it's ironic, but if you're constantly stretching for a minimalistic perspective, anything that interrupts that will become a negative thing. And that negative thing creates a non-sustainable environment. And then when you're a maximalist, anything outside of the maximalist will create, like anything that gets minimized will create a negative node, right? It'll create negativity. So if you're constantly viewing at one extreme or the other extreme, rarely does that become sustainable, because there are so many things that doesn't belong to the minimalistic lifestyle or the maximalistic lifestyle. Inherently, anyone who's reaching sustainability has a moderate opinion on most things, because sometimes you take one from column A, one from column B, and then your net output is reading, are you positive or negative? It sounds kind of like a business proposition. How do you keep your business afloat? And the business is you, I guess. It's probably how it goes. And there's no answer. There's no answer that you can absolutely offer to anyone other than getting to know that person and trying your best. So if I were to help someone, right, and I asked them, hey, can you write down all the things that you're doing, important and unimportant? How are you waking up in the morning? Are you a 10 out of like 1,000? All right, let's aim for 11 tomorrow. Let's do all the lists. What is your most negative sources? What are your most net positive sources? You don't even need to break them down like analytically. If this is subtracting all the stuff, let's address that. What percentage of the time are you using this negative node? It could be a job, for example. So what aspects can we be too creative to offset that? Where can you change your order book, your holdings in your life, and we can address those things. And you're aiming for an improvement. It doesn't matter how big the improvement is or how weak the improvement is. That's an efficiency lifestyle. Some people who always strive for, this is the best way to learn something, this is the worst way to learn something. You'll get the most gains from here, you'll get the least gains. And oftentimes I do find that those people become potentially hyper-focused on the potential return on investment versus actually performing the actions to doing those. So you might disproportionately end up investing so much time in formulating the ideal methodology to approach something, and then overall ended up in the potentially same place, pragmatically speaking. Like, for example, a language learner that is process oriented versus a language learner that's end goal oriented. You might end up reaching the same place. However, for me, I was net happy every single day along the way to that, whatever that arbitrary goal is. In fact, by the time I ever get to there, or if I even get to there, I would be looking at a goal somewhere else. I don't use, and sustainability doesn't mean you look for a goal and there's an end goal. Sustainability is a constant moving flagpole. So you could call it like process oriented sustainability. Whenever I improve one day, that goalpost moves. So that is the natural normative state mindset that I have. It's not, oh, if or when I get to a specific goal. That is more like a minimalistic and a maximalistic mindset. That's a mindset that's required for something like that. You can reach a satisfactory, optimal, minimalistic lifestyle. You can reach a maximal, optimistic lifestyle. Sustainable is, can I get one step further? Can I get one step higher? And another one step, and a one step. Oh, I took a misstep, now I'm down 2, but I'm still net positive, so it's still sustainable, right? And that arbitrary line is like some thing that keeps moving. So if it ends positive, I go to bed and I'm happy. I've attained my goal. And then every single day I continue to go to bed a little happier. Sometimes I get a little sadder. However, it is never in the sense that I go to bed and I say, I can't do this anymore. If you are saying that to yourself, support system. Professional, hire someone that is paid to help you reach past sustainability. Like, you have to get to net zero and then build up, right? If you are negative, you are declining over time. And it is like a really, really depressing and disappointing slow death. And I do not like seeing people spiral or dip. And it's really hard to see when it's very slow. So those are the things I tend to focus on a lot of times. And I've already set a foundation for my own life where if I need to get a job tomorrow, I'll do it, right? So necessarily because of that, I don't have an urgency anymore to focus on self-improvement. What can I do with all of that? I can invest in other people, because there's always a chance something bad really, really happens and you get punched so hard, your sustainability falls off the charts, right? But those things tend to be temporary, hopefully, except death. Death is permanent. Sorry, that's a little morbid joke, like dark humor. But outside of death, what is the only other way, in my opinion, to get back to sustainability when that lifestyle fails? Forces you cannot control, forces you can't do, resources you don't have. So ultimately, my pragmatic approach is other people. Other people is what happens. It's your trump card. It's your items. So when your life is, sustainability doesn't have great ebb and flow. So if you have a sustainable lifestyle, you're looking for small changes over time in small declines over time. It's to offset that, oh, I didn't realize my life was going down in poop chute. And then fast forward 10 years and like, oh, it was just so gradual that I just got used to having a crappy lifestyle, right? And those things, if you're focusing on those things, there's a trade-off. One of the trade-off is you can't take on like sudden really big disasters and sudden really both ways. You can't capitalize on gigantic opportunities, and you can't where you're not well equipped or practiced to looking and at giant opportunities, and you're not quite great at rescuing from giant disasters. So for me, I spend most of my time investing in other people, because largely those individuals would be my safety net for when these things happen. Like, if I suddenly fall down the stairs, I will have a support system that, like, sustainable lifestyles do not address that. Like, what happens when you suddenly get into a car accident or something? So largely I know what my lifestyle is like, and I also prepare for it in that way. I think when you start thinking about like extremes, then extremes are what you're going to get. And my lifestyle is not filled with extremes too often. Like I don't expect myself to suddenly become juggling thousands of people from interacting with one person, for example, just to keep it on task, right? So if that happens, then you bet I have people to help me already. Like, I already know who I can, approach for that kind of thing. So I don't have skills built for that. And I also don't have skills for incredible disasters. So that's often why professionally it's very comfortable to, when someone is incredibly depressed or like almost like incredibly having intrusive thoughts, you seek a professional. Specialists have mindsets like that. Yeah, specialists have many specialists, and they have their trade-offs, right? They have their trade-offs. To become a specialist, it takes a lot of checks and balances, like extreme checks and balances. Like, oh, I'm married to this job. Does that provide all the positive resources to offset everything you sacrifice to be specialized in that? I don't make decisions like that. So when someone asks me, how do I stay consistent with language learning? There's a chance I might be able to provide lots of adequate ways to do that. If you're saying, how do I learn Japanese in 1 month? Then I have no answers for you. I would probably defer you to someone who has that type of mindset. It would be very appropriate to find someone who's like studying 18 hours a day non-stop until their eyes bleed to hit that 1 month milestone or something. And with that said, I'm only answering and addressing the question of sustainability. On top of it is still ending up problem solving and critical thinking. Yeah, never heard the name of this game, Slays? Oh yeah, because the game is gonna be released in 2 days, Slays. It will be released in 2 days. Yeah. I disagree with some tiny things, especially that adding happiness for whatever that means, as I believe you can't do that yourself, but it's still a great answer. Thank you for sharing. You can't do that yourself. Yeah. I can see that. I don't know if I'm suggesting that you can add happiness yourself. So maybe I might have misspoke somewhere, but I did not indicate anything about adding happiness for yourself. It's all interconnected. So investing in people, it's all interconnected. I hope I didn't give that impression that you can do anything yourself. Rarely can you do anything yourself. I think people who, in my opinion, who view digital minimalism and digital maximalism, or like whatever, that type of thing, they have the typically have the mindset that they can conquer the world themselves. They always have the answer themselves. I'm very much dependent on other people. Like, in fact, I would be very, very, that's why I keep saying support system. Support system, support system, support system. And everything I invest, I reinvest in people. Being human is effectively suggesting that you can't do it yourself. I think that's one of the core principles. In this day and age, I think the heavy reliance on parasocial relationships may create this warped perspective that you can do everything yourself without the feedback of another person. And rarely do I feel comfortable in suggesting that is something sustainable. And you know, in this digital age like TikTok, and we'll go back to your first one about TikTok and Instagram, the vast majority of people spend their lives interacting parasocially. As in, the other thing you're interacting has no actual feedback. There's like, all the feedback's actually coming from you. You are projecting or deducing their feedback, as in the feedback is coming within. So I think that's hyper overrepresented. And that might be also the driver for digital minimalism, if you know what I mean, Munchie. Like, the perceived value oftentimes is deduced and projected by oneself. As in, you see this TikTok influencer and you think there's value in it. Even though the TikToker is telling you there's value, that's parasocial. As in, that TikToker isn't actually speaking directly to you. Nor can you say, I think this is valuable, and that TikToker can respond to. You know, granted, there are people who are lucky who maybe know the TikToker or the Instagrammer, but I think the vast majority of people are not like the interaction we're having now, which is you have direct feedback from someone and maybe foster a relationship and whatnot. I think the vast majority of comfort that people get is parasocially. You look at this person's life through a limited lens, and that person has no response whatsoever. And whatever you think is useful and valuable is self-imposed, as in, like, you determine if it's valuable. And then that influencer might be responsible for kind of influencing you to think it's valuable. In the end of the day, it is up to your problem solving and critical thinking skills to ascribe value to it. And rarely do you get actual feedback. So living in a situation where you're constantly in your own head, solving your own problems, will naturally and rationally encourage you to think that you can solve everything. You can create your own happiness out of thin air. You can magically do whatever it is you can because you've gathered all the information. And I think that's overrepresented. It might be a symptom of parasocial relationships, compounded and supported by heavy business-oriented influence, right? Influence. Business models are emphasizing that. Don't do this, do this. That's provocative. And yet, in the end of the day, I will still say to you, if you have 3 great friends, even one, if you have a loving parent, start there. Share those ideas with them, because it's incredibly hard to substitute a different perspective without actually having another person with a different perspective. Most of the time when you're consuming YouTube videos and stuff, that is an echo chamber most of the time. And that echo chamber is whatever you want it to be, because no one is actually telling you that, hey, oh, don't get my words twisted, or hey, you know, I like that you love this video, but may I, you know, and then you're directly talking to the person, right? And it's not like I'm saying this can be achievable. It really can't be. When you're talking about an influencer who like has a target audience of 1 million people, it's ludicrous to think that that one person can interact with all 1 million people individually in a level that will provide enough feedback. So as a human being, as a person who understands the human condition, form relationships. That is a great counterbalance. Interpersonal skills are paramount. The heavy reliance on parasocial relationships, like TikTok and influencers, remove the need to develop interpersonal skills. You no longer, like, oftentimes it's unpracticed on how to ask questions, how to provide feedback, how to trust someone even. You know, that's kind of crazy. You can only trust yourself for a lot of people. Like, even to the point where when you meet that influencer and you talk to that influencer, you don't even trust that influencer's conversation. You trust what was presented behind the lens. As in, you like the curated version of that influencer. As in, you realize that the real deal, when you talk to them, turns out it's not as sensational and crazy as what you see behind the lens. And largely because that lens has no feedback for you. It is a projection and a reflection of yourself oftentimes. Video games do that too. If you play a video game, you are projecting your ideal self. You are trying to entertain all the ideas from yourself. There are exercises that I like to do that I can exemplify why my mindset is a bit different, per se. Is the idea that I get to talk to Daniel, by the way, when I play this game. That is one of my main... Why am I playing this game? If someone asked me... Someone literally said this to me the other day. Say, why don't you play a more interesting game? And my thought was, what do you mean? Like Roblox? Fortnite? Or like any other 1,000 unreachable, influenced community members and whatnot? Like, I'm playing this game because I get to talk to Daniel. Like, Daniel emailed me, gave me an advanced copy of this game. There's no solicitation whatsoever. Like, I didn't say anything. I'm not like here saying, hey, sponsor me or something like that. Right? I do joke about it quite a bit. So how valuable is that to me? It's absolutely valuable. Any other day, I could sit here and form a parasocial relationship with any other content creator or any other viewer by doing like playing a FromSoft game or something, and you would get those tenuous parasocial relationships. But I don't think it circumvents what is absent often. And in a lot of people nowadays, what is absent is truly an interpersonal interaction with anyone. I think the vast majority of people now in the digital age, again, I think it's a motivation for digital minimalism, is the idea that it might push some people towards the value of human interaction. And it doesn't have to be offline, right? Discord is a tool, but Discord can be leveraged to form human interactions. You can start with texting, then you can start with emoting, you can share artwork and whatnot. So the tools that I have today are the tools I'm leveraging specifically to encourage people to not necessarily just rely on one thing. That's like getting all your catharsis and your protective advice and stuff from parasocial relationships, and occasionally splice in, you know, interpersonal relationships, the ones where if this person disagrees with you, you can talk about it. You can't do that with an influencer. I mean, you can type something, like type a YouTube comment, right, and spin your wheel and say, oh, you might get someone, right? Actually, honestly, that's still more, where I would say something like, okay, I respond parasocially to something. I would type something, and then if someone responds, I would probably use any of those people to spire up a conversation. But you know, in this day and age, in a digital age, the response just stops there. It's like I just want to be heard, and that's it. There's no like oftentimes there's no follow-up, there's no discussion, right? Like you and I are trying to have a discussion, but at the same time I'm obviously the one with the mic, and it's still unbalanced. But this is still more, it is, in my opinion, still more than saying something and then pretending like you're heard with no actual feedback. And then when there is feedback you don't like, or feedback you're critical about, or feedback that you like but you don't want to invest in the effort because you already know you're right, that is avoidance behavior. And ironically, it could be sustainable for the rest of your life as long as you're happy about it. Like, I'm not here to, like, there are different ways people stay sustainable, like happy wise, right? If their interaction is always one-sided, then I guess so be it. I'm not gonna, step on anyone's toes here, or try to step on anyone's toes. I actually do, like you said, like you might have suggested, being human requires human interaction. And I hope that illustrates why I play video games publicly as well. If I can't interact with a friend, and I don't have friends around me who play video games or have time to play video games, then I sure as heck am going to leverage what technology or what tools I can to make them interactable. At least this is my personal lifestyle choice. So why yesterday someone asked a question about language learning. They I think they innocently came back and asked me, oh, have I used my target language publicly yet? And my first response, it was a little bit direct because I was kind of I wasn't thinking about it. My initial response is like, you mean like every day? Because I don't see the internet as a personal space, right? I'm learning language in the presence of people. So I want to interact with those people. When I'm doing something in a public space, the internet is a public space too. A lot of people think it's a personal space, like just out of intent and personal. Like when you're watching YouTube, it's you and that content creator, right? But it's just you. Really, it's only you. There's that content creator has no awareness of you outside of potential number, or if you're lucky enough to interact with that person. So I think sometimes spending so much time alone with your own thoughts and your own interpretations of someone else behind the screen, when you're down and you're upset, or you don't know how to solve a problem, or there isn't anyone there, right? And yes, some of the content could be helpful. Like, I love content creators who still try. It's not like you shouldn't try, but try. Like, so you can read comments like, oh, thanks to your content, it keeps me motivated and stuff. And then that's great. That's still a positive. However, if I hear that from someone, my first thought is, if I had the time, right? But these influencers would not rationally or realistically have that time. My first thought in that position would be, I hope they have other people. I hope I am not the only source. Like, I hope your source to be motivated and happy and sustainable is not a parasocial relationship with me. That creates an obligation. It also creates a potential pitfall when that fails. So it's a very tenuous path. Like, if someone says, you're the only reason I learn language, my first inclination is like, what happens when I fail to do that? I would be the source of negativity without even knowing that I'm the source of negativity. As in, like, one day I'm going to stop language learning or stop producing the content for this person, and that person will be upset. Like, dude, why aren't you going back? Like, I used to love the old you. And I'm like, it's not the old me or the new me. This is me. I'm a person. The first thing when we have a positive rapport, I would probably say, or just rapport, that's redundant. When we establish rapport, the first thing I would go out of my way to do is to diminish dependency. There's an overrepresentation, almost a business-like, predatorial, not necessarily out of malice, but cutthroat way of creating dependency. A successful content creator is creating dependency where there isn't, in my opinion, because it's good for business. And I'm not saying it's a bad or a good thing, it's pragmatic. Businesses create a dependency, a sustainable dependency, even that, ironically, for their business, right? They keep you latched onto things, keep coming back for views, that kind of thing. And I always jokingly said that I'm a terrible content creator, which I don't really qualify myself as a content creator. I'm a hobbyist who shares experiences, right? So my first inclination is, if I see you once and you say you're depressed, but my, talking to me helps a lot, right? If you are truly wanting to tell me, trying to explain to me that I helped you a lot, is that the next time I don't see you for 3 months, and then you come back and tell me how much your life has changed. Because that is a true demonstration to me that I've helped you in an indirect way or maybe a direct way, and now you're healthy in creating, you can also choose to have a relationship with me. That's fine too, provided time permits and stuff. Generally, that's not very ideal, right? However, if you're helped, you would seek other relationships. You would attempt to maximize things as opposed to diversify. It begins to sound like a business proposition again. You would try to diversify, and that is kind of how I feel about the digital age. And I totally understand where you were coming from about the whole digital minimalism. That's it's kind of like a keto diet, if you will, Munchie. I know this. I'm saying this in a very serious way. It's a band-aid. It's like a very extreme response to an ongoing, very concerning, extreme, overrepresented case, right? And once that is addressed, the idea to me is, if that's helping, you would slowly encourage that person to find a more sustainable lifestyle. As in, okay, the keto diet works for now. Now let's try and work on your decision making so that you're not always on that keto diet. Let's see what you can learn that works in that keto diet, and then make it not a keto diet. Make it a thing that has lots of options, right? Because the more options you have, the more likely you're going to be consistent and sustainable. Which doesn't make you, better at suddenly you're in a car accident or suddenly you gain 100 pounds. The idea is life is consistency. You have lots of consistency things versus your one-offs and stuff. Like people who play a video game, those are one-offs. They take parts in your life, but if you step back, you can play many video games, right? That kind of thing. I guess that's a pretty good digression. I hope that helps. Maybe I'll cut out this part. I haven't had a unrelated conversation before, or opportunity like this. I actually have a bunch of these digressions in my channel under deep digressions, but I've answered I've talked about these things quite often back in the day whenever someone asks a question like, hopefully, and this is all my personal opinions, of course, my anecdotes, and also it's not, again, I want to emphasize, it's not offered as professional advice or anything. most of the people who ever get to know or understand the things I'm saying are typically my personal friends, right? I don't offer professional advice in any way. I'm not a psychologist by training, nor a psychiatrist or any form of mental health specialist. I was a biologist, and I dealt with things that aren't humans or other humans. Nowadays, though, I guess I do interact with human beings. Yep, that's the best attempt. Investing forward, as you say. You ask a question that's really brilliant, and I'll give you the time of day, right? It doesn't derail anything I have planned for today, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't choose to do it. I would probably excuse myself courteously and hope that the other person understands, right? If they don't, that's fair enough, right? There you have it. All right, let's get back to